Hello, how are you? Now, in this series of videos, we are going to create an Angular dashboard with Angular Material 3 with the latest version 18, but it's going to be a special dashboard because it is going to be customizable. So you can customize this dashboard in a lot of ways. So you can see that we can actually delete your dashboard widgets if you'd like. You can actually move your dashboard around like this, here and there, in a CSS grid row fashion. And you can also change the sizes of the dashboard widgets. So you can see that we can increase some widths here. We can increase the heights here even. And all of the CSS grid is going to adjust itself to that size as well. You can add that widgets again, and you can increase the height of this widget as well. And you can increase the width of this. So you can rearrange and realign or resize your widgets according to your needs. You can allow the users to do it. And you can also do it yourself from the backend through some API calls. So for example, so it brings out a lot of opportunities for your Angular apps. And another thing that it animates all of these changes pretty fluently. So we're using the animate CSS grid package, which is a nice utility package I'm using for animating these CSS grid changes. Okay, and you can see that everything realigns perfectly. As you can see, we are going to move this here, move this here, move this back here. You can see that the changes are really smooth. Okay, so lastly also that all of this layout is basically stored in local storage, synced with local storage. So if you refresh the app, you're going to see that we are going to remember the state of your dashboard. And if you want to clear this dashboard, obviously you can just go in local storage and clear it. And obviously this brings out the possibility that you can also sync it with your own REST APIs and with your own server-side implementations. So I built this using all of the latest Angular 18.1 features with Angular Material 3 and with the standalone components, for example, with this whole Signals API and the reactivity it brings. So you will learn a lot during this process as we build this real life project. Now in this tutorial, we are going to cover quite a lot of ground. So we are going to create reusable components. We are going to create components dynamically because we need a different content for each of our widgets. We are also going to use CSS Grid, and we are going to see how to change the layout of the CSS Grid. And lastly, we are also going to create a small, simple store for our project because there's a lot of communication between different components, and we wanted to do in a proper way using a store using the power of signals. Okay, so lastly, if you need the code for this or you just need the app to use in your own application, you can get the whole source code from my BMC shop. The link to that is given in the description and you can check that out. Now, I don't run ads on this channel much and I also don't do sponsorships. So any help there is greatly appreciated. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started on this project. Okay, so we are going to start with a basic Angular Material application. Now, I already have a basic Angular Material application, as you can see, set up, and I have just a side nav here. Now, this is from a previous tutorial series that I did. I have a link in the description to the whole playlist if you want to go through that. But if you want to start it from your own project as well, you just need to make sure that you have it on the latest version, and that is Angular version 18.1. And also you have the Material version on Angular 18 if you want to use the new Angular Material 3, which I'm using as well. Okay. So just make sure you do that. And if you want to create a new project, it's really easy. You can do ng new, the application name, and then you can give any parameters that you would like to, and it's going to create the new Angular application with the latest CLI version. So make sure you install the latest Angular CLI version before you do this. All right. So I'm going to start with my existing project here. It has different lazy loaded routes in different components, and I'm going to just build the dashboard here in this specific component. Okay. So this is the starting point, and we just have a heading channel dashboard in our component. So what's the first thing that we need to do? We need to create a reusable widget component. Now, to create the reusable widget component, we first need to create a sort of interface for that widget so that we know what properties a widget is going to contain. So let's go in our models folder here, which we have kept here for interfaces, and we're going to create a new file here. We're going to just call this dashboard.ts, and here let's create an interface or a type. You can also create a type. So we're going to call this a widget, and in this interface we are going to specify first of all the ID of the widget just to identify a separate widget to make them different. Then we'll have the label. Now this label is going to be a string, and it is also going to double as a title of the widget, which is shown here in the example here as well. You can see this thing here. So this will be our label. And then the third thing we need is the most important thing is the content. Now the content will be variable, so it will be a different content for each of the widgets. So how do we keep it variable? Now we're going to keep our own components and then specify them here. So what will be the type of this? We don't know the type for this, so we are going to use a type unknown here. I'm going to import it from Angular core here. Okay, since each component, each content component that we have will be a different type, so we can't specify a type here upfront. Okay, so we have our basic type here. Now, as we customize the widget component or make it more customizable, we are going to add some more components here. But for now, this is going to do. Let's save this, and we are also going to then create the widget component then, which is linked with this widget interface. So let's create a new component here. We're going to do ngg and component. And since it's a reusable component, we are going to keep it in our components folder. We're going to call this widget. Now I have kept all of my components as an inline style and inline template, which means I'm going to keep it in a single file, component file. You can use your own style if you want, but I prefer this style, so I'm going to use the same, all right? Okay, so let's go in our widget component now. And you can see that it is here in our components along with some other reusable components that we have. Okay, so our widget component just has some basic text here now. So creating a component is basically a reusable component is a balance between, keeping some properties at constant, some visual layout similar, and then some changes that we want for each of the separate components as well. So we need to balance out between providing flexibility and allowing some customizability as well. So in our case, our widgets are basically meant to be used within our dashboard only. So we are just going to specify an input here, which is going to be of the same type. So we're going to send the whole widget type to our widget component, and that is going to contain all of the information that the component needs to render itself. All right, so we're going to create data, which is going to be an input, and this input is going to be required. Now we're using the new notation of the signal based input, which is really nice and simple as compared to the decorator one previously. So we're going to have a required input because without this, the widget does not have any meaning. And in the type, we are going to specify the widget type here. Great. So we have our data. And now we need to add some basic styles so that we can have that similar looking feel to all of our widgets. Okay. So some basic styles we're going to add is that we are going to add a host here, host styling. We are going to make it display block. And we're also going to give it a border radius to make that nice rounded feel to it. Okay, and inside of this, we're going to give it a div. This is going to contain all of our content here. Let's call this container as a class. Now the container class, I'm going to just copy it in because it contains quite a lot of styles here. So I'm just going to copy this in with all of the styles that I already have here so that we can save some time. And you can see there's basically a position relative which we'll need further down. We have a height and width so that it covers the whole area that is being given to it in the CSS grid. And then we have a padding so that there's some spacing, and then we have border radius inheriting and overflow hidden so that even the content is more than the widget size, it doesn't overflow the widget itself. Okay, so this is some basic styles, and let's see how this looks. Now to test how this looks, we're going to go to our dashboard component. We're going to add this to our template here, just one widget for now. We're going to do app, and we're going to use a quick tip, and it's going to automatically add this to our imports here. You can see, okay, you can see here that it gives us an error that, okay, it needs some data because it is required property. So let's create some data here. So let's create a new widget here just to test things out. And let us create a data here, which we're going to call as a widget. And in this widget, we're going to give the ID as 1 maybe. And let's say the label as the first one, which is the subscribers. Let's make it into the subscriber statistics card. And in the content, then we need a component here. So what do we do for that? So let's create a component as well here. And let's do ngGC. Now for the component content, we are going to keep it in our dashboard folder here. And within that, we are going to create a folder here as well in pages and dashboard. And we are going to use a widgets folder here where we are going to create all of our contents of our different widgets. And let's call this subscribers. Now inline templates and inline style is automatically added in my case for this project. So I'm just going to make this flat here just to reduce the folders that we'll have. Just creates a component file itself. Okay, so if you can see here, we have the widgets here and we can see a component file here with subscribers. All right, so let's see that. Let's write here subscribers are ready. And let's go back to the dashboard itself here. And in the content here, now we want to import this subscribers widget content. And let's do subscribers here. And you're going to get the subscribers content here. All right. Now we can give this data in the form of the data here. Now this is just for testing purposes. We're going to change this in a bit. So let's just save this and let's see what we get. Now we don't get anything because the width and height is nothing. So we don't have any data there. So what we're going to do is we are going to add some configuration to our widget here. So in our template here, we're also going to add a title here. We're going to add an h3, and within that we are going to specify data because it's a signal input dot label. Okay, so we're going to use a label and render it here. Here we're also going to remove the margins that it has. We have some utility classes that I already have so that it appears fine. All right, let's save this. And now you can see that we have subscribers written here. Now we can't see anything else because the colors and everything is basically the same with the background and everything. So we are going to change that in a bit. We can also do another thing to make it a bit more apparent. So we can add a sort of an elevation class to it, which is one of the utility in Angular material, so that we can easily see the borders of our widget component here. So we're going to add Z3 here. And now you can see the widget component is basically extended towards the whole screen because we are actually not constraining the width and the height at this point. Okay, great. So we have one widget which appears nicely on the screen, all right? But we're not really interested in one widget only, of course. We need a list of widgets, and we can actually add these list of widgets to the component as well. But in this case, since we need to add a service in any case, because we'll need to in the future communicate among the components in an efficient way, so we need to have a small store where we can actually keep all of this data and change all of that data. So let's create a dashboard service where we can all store all of this. Okay, so let's create a service as well at this point. Ngg service, and in our services folder we are going to add the dashboard service. You can see the dashboard service we have here, and now here we can shift the widget data from the dashboard component. So let's shift this here. Let's bring this here. And this is not going to be a simple data because it's going to be dynamic, it's going to be changing. So it's much better, or in fact, it's necessary now with zoneless to actually use signals now. So we're going to create a new signal here. We're going to call this widgets. And this is going to be a signal with a type of widget, an array. So it's going to be an array of widgets. And here then we're going to specify the initial value as this array. Okay, we need to import the subscribers component here as well, and we can remove the subscribers component from here basically. Okay, so now we have this one. Now let's also add another one just so that we can test the list. So let's add this second one here. Let's call the second one as the views. So let's create a component just like we did for the subscribers. We're gonna do views, which is going to show the views statistic. Okay, so we have another widget here added in the views, and let's just say views showing here. Let's just save this, and then in the dashboard service we can also add another widget here, and make sure to change the ID because it has to be unique, and we're going to use this for tracking the list. And for the labels we can say views, and in this we can just import the views component. Okay, so we have our widgets here. Now how do we use this widgets data in our dashboard component? Now, since it's a dashboard service, and originally with any service that you create, it is provided in root. Now, provided in root means that this service is going to be available to all of our components, to all of our app. Okay. Now, but we want this dashboard service only to be limited to our dashboard component because that is where it's needed. We don't want it to be initialized or used when it doesn't need to be. So we're going to use this provided in root here, and we're just going to leave this empty. And then we're going to go in our dashboard component here, and we're going to add a providers here, and we're going to provide the dashboard service here. So now what this does is that it creates a new instance of that service only for this specific component. All right. And this is a good practice to follow when you're creating stores. It is a good practice to keep them scoped to the specific component that needs that state instead of, making it global. Unless, of course, you need a global store in which you can use provided in root, which is the best option in that case. Okay. So here we need to provide it only towards the level of this component. So we're going to use this here. Okay. So since we have this dashboard here, we can just call it store because it is essentially a simple store. and we can use inject, and in this we can give the dashboard service. Okay, and now we can use the for control block, the control flow block. We can say w of store dot widgets, and we can just simply access that store. Remember, we don't even need to declare that widgets or define that widgets in the component. We can just directly use it from the store itself. Okay, and what do we want to track here? We want to track it with the ID. Okay, so in this for, we are going to put in our widget here, and in this data, then we are going to do data. We're going to just give w here. Okay, so now we should have our two widgets showing up on the UI, their specific components, right? Okay, so you can see that I said specific components, but we are not seeing the component content, the content here itself. We're just seeing the titles here, which is a basic data which we are sending in. So how do we do that? Now, for rendering the component dynamically for this content, what we need to do is we need to use the ng component outlet directive. All right. So to do that, we're going to go in our widget again, and then here just below the heading, we are going to first we're going to import the ng component outlet here, and then we are going to declare an ng container here. And now, since we are doing dynamic component rendering here, it's good to know that there are multiple ways to do this. So you can also do it imperatively, like you can do it through code where you get the view container reference, and then you sort of use the add component function and send the component there. But for most purposes, you can use the declarative approach, which I'm using here. So in the declarative approach, you just use a directive to specify the component that you need to dynamically insert to the DOM, and you can specify this like this. So we can do data.content here. All right. So let's save this and see how this looks. And now you can see that the content of the subscribers and the content of the views component is showing here, and we can now change this and edit this to whatever we want, and it's going to show here fine. All right. Now let's work on the layout a bit here. We can see some basic structure to it, but we would like to have a sort of a grid layout so that it looks like a dashboard grid. And to make that grid, we are going to go back to our dashboard component here. And before this for if, we are going to create another div here. We're gonna add a class here. We're gonna call this dashboard widgets, and then just shift everything inside of this. And in the styles, we're going to create our dashboard widget style here. It is going to be a display grid, as I mentioned before as well. And then it's going to use a responsive grid technique that we use using grid template columns. All right. So a grid has your columns and your rows. So the rows are variable for us, but the columns we want to keep it within some certain sizes. All right. We don't want to keep it fixed, but we want to keep it within certain sizes, some minimum sizes. So we use a trick for that, and we're going to use that here. So we're going to do grid template columns. And now we can use a simple way as well. So we can do repeat for 1fr. Now this means that there are going to be 4 columns, and it's going to be equally divided among the space that we have. And of course, we also want to give a gap, because otherwise grids don't look really nice without gutters. So let's test this out. And now you can see that we have 2 widgets left here. There is space for 2 more because we did that way. But we also want to make it responsive as well. So that means that when we reduce the sizes here, we want the number of columns to actually reduce, so that the widgets actually go to the next column or come back to the previous one based on the width as well. So how do we do that? Now we are going to replace this for with basically autofit. So this is going to automatically find out how many columns you need, and on what criteria it's going to decide that. It's going to use a minimax function, and we are going to give a minimum width here of 200 pixels. So if it's less than 200 pixels, it's going to automatically wrap the widget towards the next row of the CSS grid. And then the maximum is going to be 1fr, so it's going to stretch it to the whole size as well of the width. Okay, so let's save this and try this out. So now you can see that it sort of stretches towards the whole width, and then if you reduce it, you can see that it goes to the next line. So it is an automatic sort of responsive grids without adding any media query. All right, great. So we have our basic sort of dashboard, the basic structure of the dashboard ready. So we have our reusable widget components. We have some sort of configurable data here. We have our components being dynamically rendered in our widgets. And we also have laid it out in a nice looking grid, which is responsive as well. So we covered quite a lot of ground here. In the next video, we are going to add the customizable features to our widget. We are going to allow them to be added and removed dynamically. And also we are going to add the very nice looking animations using Animate CSS Grid. So if you've not already subscribed to the channel, be sure to subscribe it so that you can receive the notification for the next one. And if you like this video, like and subscribe and share it with your friends so that more people can benefit from this. And I'll see you in the next video.